Hi there, I'm J.R. Kerr, the CEO of Handshake, and I'm here with a very dear friend and a real leader, Sherrie Westin. Sherrie, tell us about yourself and who you are.
I'm Sherrie Westin. I'm president of Sesame Workshop, and I have the privilege of leading Sesame's work around the world to help children have the quality early education they need for the best start in life.
That's awesome. Sherrie, we're here in Davos, and I know that you come here for a very particular purpose. This is a place that's filled with leaders from the private sector,
Right.
leaders from the non-for-profit sector, and leaders from the government sector, and you're here to get them to invest into early childhood development.
Absolutely.
Tell us what that means and why it's so important.
You know, it's so important. People don't always realize that those first 5 years of life are the most important in a child's brain development, in putting them on a path for success, not just in school, but in terms of long-term health, in terms of economic opportunities and earnings, productivity, and yet less is invested in early childhood than any other area. It's particularly important with children who are experiencing crisis. If you look at the number of people displaced today around the world, 100 million, 40% of those are children. And we all know whether it's conflict, Ukraine, crises, or climate change, there are going to continue to be so many situations where young children are displaced. Yet less than 3% of all aid goes into education, tiny sliver to early childhood.
Why is that? Why, if we know that, and I've heard this stat over and over again. I've not heard it just from those that are in support of early childhood development. I've just heard it in terms of like addressing crises in more domestic issues. Like you hear it often instead as a state. Why don't we just fix it?
I think, it's trying to sort of build awareness for what we know today through the brain science.
Okay.
We know those first 5 years are the most critical. We also know that if a child is exposed to conflict, crisis, prolonged exposure to stress, it literally impacts their healthy brain development with long-term repercussions.
Right.
So it's enlightening people, sharing that research, making sure they know. But if you think about crisis settings and humanitarian response, for many years they were always short-term. And it's understandable that most resources went into safety and shelter and food. Now we know most of these situations are long-term. Children are growing up in crisis in countries in conflict their entire lives. Children are displaced on average of 17 years. It's not over quickly.
Right.
So if we're not investing in giving that sort of group who is affected the most at the most critical time in their life, and with proven results that we can help mitigate those negative consequences with quality early childhood, then we're literally sort of leaving a generation behind.
Right, over and over again.
Well, and how can they possibly, when you look at all the problems we're facing and all the things we're talking about at Davos, we have to have the next generation prepared to address those issues.
Yeah, 100%.
And if we're not giving them the tools and skills they need to put them on a path to recover and to thrive, how can they possibly have the skills they need to rebuild their societies?
So what is Sesame Street Workshop doing to address this?
Well, Sesame was very fortunate. About 5 years ago, we were awarded a $100 million grant from the MacArthur Foundation for our partnership with the International Rescue Committee, which has allowed us to create the largest early childhood development program in the Syrian response region, in Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria. We are investing so much in research because what we want to do is be able to test what works, what doesn't, share the impact in those results with the world, so that even, it doesn't have to be Sesame, but we want others to understand why they need to invest in reaching the youngest children in crisis. Today, we're obviously working in Ukraine and Bangladesh and Cox's Bazar, Venezuela, Uganda, because we're creating a model that can be used. Children, regardless of the circumstances, the geography, have the same needs in those early years, and particularly those who experience trauma.
Yeah. So you're here to recruit people, and we're here to recruit people for you.
Yeah, that's so nice. So, well, we take all the help
100%, 100%. So if you were to say, like, I guess kind of the call to action, like what is it that you want people to do?
Listen, whether it's foundations, philanthropic, private sector, government sector, if people will look at the research, there is such an economic benefit. This is an investment in society, investing in those early years. James Heckman is a Nobel Prize-winning economist out of the University of Chicago, and he's done now 3 generations of work and research that shows for every dollar invested in quality early childhood development, $9 is saved for society. So I
Makes
think that's a
sense, right.
13% ROI.
Right,
so
exactly.
it's really much like we did years ago on investing in women, investing in girls.
Okay.
It's helping people to understand it's not just the moral thing to do or the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do from an economic standpoint. And I hope that others will understand, very similar to investing in women and girls, investing in children in those critical early years is essential.
It's great. I FaceTime with my kids last night because it's this Davos deal where it's both the best and the worst time of year in a lot of ways because you have to leave for so long because you feel called to it. And when I leave my children for that many days, I've got a swath, but the one I was talking to last night is 10, and she's a young lady and a 7-year-old. So I was talking to the 2 younger ones, and I find with them right now, it's really important that I say to them what they need to believe is true when they don't have their father present, because my job is to kind of tell them something about themselves every day over and over again. And so, I have a mentor who kind of told me what to say to them. And so for Emmy, for example, I said, Emmy, you're smart, you're kind, you're beautiful, and you're loved. And don't ever forget that. So I'm curious, because you stand for so many children around the world. What is the message that you want those kids to hear from the work that you do?
Well, I love what you're telling your daughter. It's very interesting because Sesame's mission is to help children everywhere grow smarter, stronger, and kinder.
Nice.
And that's baked into everything we
great.
do. And we know that if children have the opportunity to have the academic basics they need, also stronger in terms of resilience
exactly.
and health, and then kinder in terms of empathy and understanding, the world will be a better place.
Well, it is because of you and all the work you're doing. Thank you so much.
Sherrie.
Absolutely.
Okay.